All right, we are live. So, hello everyone who is tuning in, and welcome to today's webinar slash talk show session about human superpowers and male and female personality traits and skills, how they map onto each other, how they map onto the Big Five personality test, as well as how they impact the modern workplace. And I'm going to wait and see if any of you guys listening in can post a comment in the chat so we know that you're with us. And then we will get started. Hello, everybody.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome.
How are you doing today, Josephine?
I'm good. It's been a busy morning, turning into a little afternoon, so I'm okay. Yeah,
All right.
I always feel like my weeks are going a lot faster than my weekends. So,
Oh,
how are you
yeah.
doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I've got the
Yeah.
same problem, right? Weekends come and go, and the week
Mm-hmm.
uh,
hmm
week is unstoppable. And I
Sure.
see we've got people writing in the chat. So we have Igor and Valeri, Anna, Faiz.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Okay.
Okay, off
Welcome,
we
everyone.
go. So, welcome everybody to this webinar by English for IT. If you guys don't already know, we are a language and soft skills education company, and we provide courses for tech professionals all across the world. We have English and Spanish and soft skills courses, and there are 65,000 of you guys who have worked with English for IT at some point across Europe, Latin America, and the States. We've been around for 11 years. 11 years bringing good content to you guys, hopefully. And today, we are your hosts. My name is Karuna Krishnasamy. I'm an English and soft skills coach at English for IT, and I'm also a DevOps team lead at a company called Internet Brands. And joining me today is the lovely Josephine, who is also an English and soft skills coach. And maybe Josephine, you want to go into a little bit more detail because I think you're also a DevOps engineer as well, right? If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah, yeah. So welcome everyone. Welcome to the show. So my name is Josephine Zola. I'm also a English and soft skills coach here. I also work as a DevOps engineer, but particularly in the cybersecurity side of things. I'm very excited to be part of this show.
All right, cool.
hmm
Cybersecurity is always fun.
Yeah, the headache.
And Fayez is asking us how it's going. Well, it's going great. Thanks for asking.
Yes. Thanks, Fias.
So today we'll be covering superpowers or power skills, as we like to call them, that we think would be good for you to know in order to thrive in today's very fast-paced modern workplace. We've also got an interesting personality test. I think it's called the the five different personality types. We'll get to it in the slides. And it breaks down different personality types between males and females, why they matter. We've got a little bit of a Q&A session where there's some questions relating to our experiences in tech from a male and female perspective. And of course, we'll have lots of useful phrases for you guys to learn, right? And it wouldn't be a webinar without a very special offer for you guys. So we do have the Power Skills for Work course on offer today. It's a really comprehensive program. There's a lot of different skills covered. I think the Ducelet tones of Josephine and myself may or may not feature in this course. So if you like the way we sound, might be able to hear us on the Power Skills for Work course and use the code POWER50 and you'll get 50% off any package. So that's a pretty good promo code. Hope you guys find it useful. That being said, let's jump straight in to the top superpowers to be successful at work, right? And what we call superpowers are the power skills, as we mentioned, and soft skills, right? And Peter Schultz of Porsche has this very sort of illuminating catchphrase, hire character, train skills, right? So if you have the right
Couldn't agree more
character
with
for a
that.
job, there you go. Um,
Yes.
and do you find, Josephine, in your experience working with wide variety of people, you generally want someone who you can get along with and is able to show force of character versus hard skills that can be trained, right? I don't know, what's your perspective on that?
Absolutely. I always say that you can't, it's harder to change someone's personality, but it's easier to train people on skill, right? Personality is kind of something you're born with, it's innate. So I'd rather work with someone or hire someone who has a positive attitude, who's willing to learn, who's willing to take advice, who's willing to make mistakes, than hire someone who's very talented. They know everything, right? You can go to them about anything, but for lack of better word, their personality kind of stinks, right? They
Right.
are hard to get along with and talk to them. It's like a know-it-all, Mr. I know this, right? So definitely character is to me is most important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. In fact, when we do hiring, that's kind of the first thing that we look at, right? Is this person going to be a pain to work with or not, right? And based on that, um, they could be very good at what they do, but if they're not going to get along well with the rest of the team, it's generally not a good hire, at least in my experience. But anyways, taking us back to the superpowers. These are the skills that we've identified, and a lot of people have identified as being the foundation of professional success. So, really, the skills that you need to really succeed at your job, right? The ability to pitch and present yourself, the ability to communicate effectively, openness to learning and feedback, cultural awareness, emotional intelligence and empathy, and leadership and teamwork. And as we go on to the personality test, the male and female personality test later on in this deck, we'll see how some of those skills match to different personality types. Um, but I don't know, Josephine, would you agree with this list? What do you think? Are these the characteristics of someone you'd like to work with?
Absolutely. Especially with openness to learning and feedback. I think for me, especially, that's one of the characteristics that I really try to be. I've gotten a lot of opportunities and advance in my career, and also getting to know people by this openness mindset, right? And be able to take criticism and to learn from them and move on for it. And also cultural awareness, really. I think if you work in the IT field, especially a lot of teams are becoming more global. So being aware that you are working with different types of people from different cultures, from different backgrounds, can make you a well-rounded person, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially in today's kind of very globalized world, and the openness to learning and feedback as well. I think that applies to students learning English too, because some of my more successful students, like I've worked with English learners, very consistent learners for a long period of time now, and the ones who kind of push themselves to be very consistent and to continue the journey of mastering the language do really well. At least that's the pattern that I've noticed for sure. Um, but based on that list, people in the chat, what do you think your biggest power skill is? Right, the ability to pitch or present yourself, your ability to effectively communicate, your ability uh, to lead a team and to work in a team. I'm curious about the chat. What do you guys think? What's your power skill or your biggest one? Something you've been naturally kind of good at or that you enjoy? Just to get some interactivity going in the chat. Or Josephine, since maybe the chat's a little shy, what would you say your sort of biggest power skill is?
Oh man, definitely the cultural awareness And also, like I said, just having open mind. And can you go back to the slide before that? I think the last one was,
Sure.
yeah, there you go. The openness to learning and feedback and culture awareness. I think those are the two ones that I'm quite strong at. With effective communication, I think that's a skill that I always try to build more on. I think I'm a pretty good communicator, but I think I can actually get better. How about you? What is your strong suits here?
I mean, I would say effective communication. I think most of my work does involve the keyboard has been taken away from me. Let's put it that way. I've not been a hands-on engineer for a while now, and most of my job is making sure that messages get delivered um, well, right, and are understood well. So I'd definitely lean towards effective communication. I think that's where most of my salary is derived from, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think Josephine, you've done quite a bit of traveling as well, right? Which I guess folds into cultural awareness in a way.
Yeah, I've been almost every continent except for Antarctica. But yeah, so just the more you get to learn people, the more I start to realize that we're more alike than not. And the beauty of us that also makes us different. I mean, the beauty of what makes us individuals is the differences between each other. So for me, is allow me if I work with like say Indians, I can understand their communication style. If I work with Americans, of course, that's my native. I know how they work. If I work with East Europeans, I can understand. So like I said earlier, just makes you a well-rounded professional, and also being able to kind of be dynamic in the way that you approach others, in a sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a words of wisdom right there. And so Antarctica 2026, right?
Right. Let's go. Me and you. Let's go.
All right. So we've got some people responding in the chat here. Katarina says having a very systematic approach. We have Anna saying communication skills and desire for learning. Desire for learning is always very good. Igor says teamwork and leadership. All right. And Irina, oh, hi, Irina. Long time no see. Structured and systematic approach and openness to learning and feedback. All right. Beatrice says the same, openness to learning and feedback. Well, I'm glad that we've got a lot of people open to learning and feedback, and hopefully you'll pick up some new phrases from us today. So we talked about those power skills, and we've got this little sort of personality test. It's called the Big Five personality test. And the Big Five personality test was devised by, I'm going to do a little bit of Googling here because I'm bad with names. I believe it was William McDougall, right? He's a very famous psychologist. I just forgot his name. I remember what he does, and he's currently professor emeritus at the University of Oregon, right? And he devised this Big Five personality test, essentially sort of scoping people's personalities into these five different areas: agreeableness, um, openness to experience, neuroticism, conscientiousness, and extroversion. And we have the results of this personality test split between the responses of men and women. So we can see the contrast there. And Josephine and I, and you guys in the chat can have a discussion on whether or not you think these results are valid. Ah, there you go. I was looking for the who made the test, Lewis Goldberg. Um, and so how do men and women score on each personality test? Well, they are different, and it could be said that these differences are influenced by both biology and culture, but I'll leave it to you guys to put your 5 cents in as we go through this slide. And when it comes to conscientiousness, so conscientiousness is your ability to really think through the big picture of something and to maintain a very disciplined track when engaging in a particular activity. right? And so people with a high conscientiousness score tend to have strong self-discipline and tend to thrive or do really well in roles requiring precision, dependability, and time management, and also tend to be more highly organized and detailed focused. So before we get to the scores, what do you guys think? Who scored higher in this particular part of the test? Think men or women? Josephine, what do you think? What would
Yeah,
your guess be?
I was actually thinking if conscientiousness can mean the same thing as self-awareness. Would you put that in the same category?
Yeah, kind of. Self-awareness when it comes to moving towards a particular goal in a way is how I would interpret it.
I'm gonna say I think most likely maybe men probably had a higher score on this section, right? Um, just not because I'm trying to be sexist, but only because when I see the corporate world of certain genders who have leadership positions, um, I think it could be because of these factors that are contributing to that. And also because as women, we also have different factors. If you're someone who wants to build a family, some of these goal-oriented thing might be skewed a bit because of other motherlyhood, wifehood things you need to get done as well. So I think maybe the men got this.
All right, and in the chat we have Julia saying men, Irina saying women, and Faiz saying men. All right, let's see. Well, I don't know. This is a tough one for me because I'm not very organized, that's for sure. And my time management, as I'm sure other members of English for IT can comment on in the chat, my time management isn't great, but let's see. Oh, average score, women rated higher. So 7 to 8 for women, 6 to 7
Oh,
for
go
men.
women.
All right.
Yeah.
Pretty close. Pretty
Okay.
close.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost high. Hmm.
So Irina and Katerina in the chat who said women, yeah, you're right on the money. Right on the money, meaning you were correct. There you go. Um, Now let's talk about agreeableness. So people with a high agreeableness score are good at empathy and cooperation, might struggle with being assertive and making their voices heard. What do you guys think?
Mm, this is an interesting one. So when I was reading this, I was focusing on might struggle with assertiveness and making their voice heard. Um, Again, because I worked in the corporate world before, um, I hear this being a problem mostly with women, where they tend to feel like if they're in a certain leadership position, their voice is not heard. But they're quite empathetic, right? And when it comes to understanding others, right? So I think women will probably have this one, greetableness.
Yeah, I'm gonna lean towards women as well, particularly with the being good at empathy part. I do feel like women tend to be a lot more empathetic. Um, I don't know, guys in the chat, what do you guys what are you thinking? I'm gonna say Irina's also saying women.
Or women, yeah.
I'm gonna say women, and I think it's
Julia
women,
agrees.
and I think the split might be a bit more dramatic than the last slide, but let's see.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. There it is.
8 to 9, 5 to 6. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Valerie says, good question. I think it depends. Well, that's true. I mean, of course, there are definitely variances between individuals, right? Um, and of course, there are men who can be very empathetic, and there can be women who are a lot more assertive. I've definitely seen both examples in real life. But the tendency does tend to show that women are a bit more empathetic. Neuroticism. I found this an interesting way to describe a personality. Neuroticism.
Yeah.
People with a high neuroticism score experience higher levels of stress and anxiety, struggle in high pressure environments, are more emotionally aware, but also susceptible to negative emotions. Hmm.
Oh man, this is a hard one because it's so negative.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it's so negative.
Getting
Like,
a
I don't want to say.
getting a call from HR after.
Right, exactly. What do you think? What did you think about this one?
Um, so again, like I'm gonna be very careful here and say it's individual dependent, right? Save myself here. Um, but if we look at sort of contemporary literature, right? Sort of articles that come out that deal with problems like equality problems in the workplace. There is the perception, and again, I'm choosing my words very carefully here. There is the perception that women tend to experience higher levels of stress and anxiety and tend to struggle in high pressure environments. But that being said, I've also worked with many women who perform really fantastically well in very high level corporate environments. So I think it is very individual dependent, but there might be some tendencies. And I think in the chat, we have women 100%,
Oh man.
men, women, maybe women. All right, let's see.
Wow. It's a
7 to 8
that's
for women, 4 to 5 for men.
wow.
Uh,
To-
People in creative
Yeah.
professions tend to score higher in neuroticism, regardless of gender. That's the like, tortured artist archetype, maybe. All right, moving on. How accurate are these scores based on your experience? And how can understanding your big five personality traits help you realize your natural talents? So, guys in the chat, feel free to chime in. But Josephine, what do you think? Are those scores kind of accurate?
Yeah, in a sense, when we talk about empathy, for sure, I think more women I've realized are more empathetic. Um, but I think that a lot more of negative emotions, like you can't handle high pressure environments, you can't handle negative emotions. I think that research itself can be redone. Um, just because with how time has evolved, I feel like there's more women who have taken leadership positions, who have taken corporate roles. And I do feel like the ability to manage stress, like for example, in our team, right, we have Anna, we have Julia, who are having these positions that include very high stress, but they have handled situations very calmly. They're really good communicators. So again, I think that needs to be redone in a sense. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the results of that survey were from quite a while ago, and you're right. More and
that's
more
what I
women are
thought.
stepping up
Yeah.
into more and more women are stepping up into
Hmm.
leadership roles. And you made the very good point of the entire leadership of English for IT is pretty much completely female. And talking from personal experience working with English for IT, no problem whatsoever. High pressure
Yeah.
situations, not a big deal. Um, and how does understanding these personality traits help your natural talents? I think that's a bit of a tougher question. I feel like these are learnable skills in essence, right? Like they're difficult to train, but they are trainable.
Which one specifically would you say? Which one would you say that is not trainable? Like somebody has kind of to like be born with it or grow up in an environment which helps you become.
Um, Honestly, I think all of them are trainable. It's just the level of the effort needed to improve some of those might be different, right? Like if you have a very um like your conscientiousness, right? Being self-disciplined is a very difficult thing uh to grow into. It's not impossible, but it does require a lot of concerted consistent effort, I feel. Um, and agreeableness, right? Like being more assertive can be very scary for a lot of people, right? It took me like when
Yeah,
I was much earlier on in my career, it took me a lot of effort to be more assertive, right? I just culturally grew up in a place where assertiveness was seen as rudeness, right? And so that was a bit of a struggle, but I think they're all trainable. I think understanding where your gaps are does help you focus on what it is you need to train, right? Gives you a North Star to point yourself towards. So,
exactly. Yeah.
all right. And now we've got a couple of questions, right? Based on our different experience, Josephine and I are different experiences working in the tech industry. So, have you ever experienced a glass ceiling in your career? Um, and for the benefit of our audience, a glass ceiling is an invisible barrier that prevents women or other groups from reaching top leadership positions despite qualifications and experience. And if you guys want to respond in the chat, please do so. But Josephine, is that something you've ever dealt with?
No. And also, I want to say no and not yet, but I don't really want to say not yet because I never want to experience this. But it's also because I'm kind of still in the early stages of my career. I recently finished school, and then right after school, I jumped into being my career. Um, but I have had friends who had this type of experience where they had the skills, they had the talent, but because of their gender, because this was a mostly um, male, like heavily male, what word can I use? Populated? Is that the,
Environment?
I don't know if I can use it. Yeah, environment. Thank you. Right. Um, the lack of being able to move up to that certain position, I've seen them experience that. But I don't think it's that common anymore, especially in this new generation, again, where you see a bunch of new female leaders. Um, so I think this glass ceiling is slowly or at least steadily going away, right? I don't see this to be as big as a problem like from 20 years ago when my mom was growing up to my generation now, right? There's definitely a huge difference in having more women be able to achieve those positions fairly.
Yeah, I feel I have the same observation. I don't feel like I've ever experienced a glass ceiling, but again, I'm not a woman. But I do echo that sentiment of it being not as much of a problem these days. Like all the companies that I've worked at, uh, women were in high positions, and the what mattered was always whether or not the job got done well, right? And if you did well, if you uh, were pushing out good code, if you were stepping up to the plate, mentoring juniors, you'd get accelerated. At least in all the companies that I have worked with so far, which I think is a definitely a good sign. Um,
Do you think the glass ceiling is only is it a term that's only appropriate related to gender, or do you think it can be prevention of any type of demographic that you fit in?
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not necessarily just women. For example, I'm going to use Malaysia as an example, just because I grew up there, and it's a very relatable context for me. I would say that there's more of a, I don't know, I'm on live stream, I might get a might get a call from the Malaysian government, but there's more of a racial glass ceiling in Malaysia, which is a lot more problematic, I feel, right? Where certain top government positions, you're more likely to not get those if you're not from the majority race, right? And that is a problem. It's a problem that's slowly getting better, right? We have more ministers that are from the different groups in Malaysia. Um, but the point I'm trying to make is glass ceiling isn't necessarily a gender-based one, right? It can be racial, it can be economic, right? Um, it used to be where uh, maybe this isn't as big of a problem here in the States, given that there's a lot of student aid programs out. But in Malaysia, going to more elite universities would also be a problem, either from a financial perspective or again with racial quotas. So there's plenty of glass ceilings out there, but I do
Yeah.
have the feeling like things are starting to get better. Does pay equity exist in tech? Right. So the the question of equal pay for equal work, right? Considering taking into account job responsibilities, experience, and performance. Is that a problem in today's day and age? What do you guys think?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a problem everywhere, not only in tech. I think that this is definitely a issue that as I travel, it's a very common issue in a lot of different cultures where men tend to be paid more for the same job that women do. Um, and again, this is probably also another issue that's slowly dying away, hopefully, but I still think that is quite relevant. Where I've seen this a lot, where um, based on your gender, unfortunately, you get paid more, you get paid less.
So I'm going to have a bit of a spicy take here. I think, based on my understanding of, well, I'm not saying this is across the board, but in the companies that I've worked at, HRs, there is a position that needs to be filled, and there is a range for that position, right? Most companies, well, most most companies that have themselves together operate on this principle, right? There's a position, there's a range for that position, and it's in HR's interest to fill that position with someone who can do the job at a price that, at a rate that makes sense for both parties, right? And I don't think that HR squeezes this range based on gender, right? I think the range is fixed, and I think that maybe it is a question of bargaining, or not bargaining, of negotiation during the process. Because for me, it's hard for me to think of them adjusting the range based on someone's gender. Maybe it happens, but at least in the companies that I've worked for, that's pretty much a fixed range. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Josephine?
It's a tricky one for me because I can't say for sure because again I've never been in that side of the job hiring process where I was able to contribute to someone's how is someone's getting paid their salary. Um, but I can only speak in a perspective of what my friends have told me or what I've heard others share. That, oh, me and John were both software engineers and we both have 5 years experience, but he's making 90K and I'm only making 80K, right? And that's usually the complaint what I hear. Okay, you have the same amount of years, you're doing the same job, but then the price range is different. Now, it could be contributes to a lot of factors. Maybe John has some other talents that Becky doesn't have, right? That I don't know of. Um, but I know that it is still an issue because I still hear people complain about it, and I hear people complain about it in other cultures as well, right? So not only in American culture, but in East European cultures and African cultures and Asian cultures, right? So this is a global issue for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure um, there are countries and places out there that really do like straight up discriminate against people. I feel like the U.S. tech landscape is such where it's. I'm not denying that it happens. I just think it's not a conscious decision on the
Prominent.
part of the
Okay.
company,
Hmm.
right? Like I don't think a HR person is sitting there thinking like, oh, okay, how am I gonna pay, this person less versus some other
Okay.
person just
He's a
based on
woman.
gender. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I could be wrong. Um, just being behind, like being on the other side of the table as a hiring manager, I've never. It's always been a discussion of this is the range we have for the position, and does this person have what we're looking for, and how they negotiate that range, right?
Okay.
Um,
Can I, if I, I'm sorry, if I can just chime in. So if
yeah,
we
yeah.
just focus on gender, right? Okay, so just men and women. I think most things that I heard when we talk about unequal pay is not only being a different gender, but also a different demographic that you fit in. So
Mm,
maybe that could be a contribution why people feel like, okay, it's not only because I'm a woman, but I'm also part of the POC community, or it's because I have this, right? So I think it could be a combination of a lot of different factors that people feel like they may not be paid equally, not only because they're a woman, but they are also part of some type of other demographic, right? Um, which I think it's harder to do research on that, um, to really understand the process or to really evaluate why this happens, right? Why do companies will deliberately not pay someone just because you're a different gender? I think that's quite malice in a sense. I don't really will understand why you will go through that. I don't know. I guess I don't think like that, so it's harder for me to understand that type of concept.
yeah, it's the intentional part is where I kind of have my doubts. Right? I don't doubt that it happens, but I don't think in most cases, at least in the US tech sphere, I don't necessarily think that it's with malice, right? It could be people's subconscious biases, but I don't think there's an HR manager sitting there being like, or a hiring manager being like, oh, okay, I'm gonna pay this guy more. Um, but maybe I've got a very
Because
optimistic
he has a
view on
beard.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. What are your thoughts on imposter syndrome? Do you think it affects men and women in tech differently? You guys in the chat, have you experienced imposter syndrome? Or Josephine, have you encountered imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think the first time I really encountered, first of all, I learned this in psychology so many times from high school to undergrad, and I was like, oh no, this can never happen to me. How can you be an imposter if you know you have all these skills, all this knowledge? But this is definitely real. So the first time I experienced this was right after I finished my undergrad. I was right entry job to become a DevOps engineer, and I was surrounded by all these skilled individuals who had knowledge on these tools. And coming as a beginner, I just felt like I was in that spot. I felt like I lacked the experience and knowledge that they had. And so I went through a phase of comparison a lot. I was like, oh, I'm not good enough because I don't know this specific tool. I don't have this many user experience. So it kind of put me in a few months, like I was kind of in a stage of doubt a lot, where I had to always second guess my knowledge, second guess what I learned in school. So this is definitely real, and but it's real, but you can get through it, right? You can definitely get through it by just reassuring yourself that no, you have the skills, you invested time and money to learn these skills, and you can't compare yourself to others who've been in the industry for 5, 10 years, right? That's not a fair comparison to yourself.
Yeah, no, that's a very good perspective, and um, I think as you get more experience, it does lessen. But I can tell you now, I've been working in the tech industry for well over 10 years now, and I still feel it from time to time, right? And similar feelings as you've described, like, oh, I don't really know this particular framework, or I'm rusty at this, or I mentioned earlier on that the keyboard has been taken away from me. I haven't been writing code actively for a number of years now. Like, am I still an engineer? Those thoughts do surface, but not as much as when I first started my career, that's for sure. Like with time, it does get better. Um, and we have Irina saying, agree with Julia that yes, absolutely, imposter syndrome is a thing. And Valeria says sometimes it happens. Yes, yeah, and I think as you progress in your career, it still happens, but to a lesser degree, which is heartening. But
Yeah.
what makes me feel good?
Yeah.
What makes me feel good is this is gonna sound I'm gonna sound like a terrible human being, but um, when I have to do interviews, right? When I have to give interviews, and some of the interviews I've had have been so well, like the candidates have just been
Bad.
so inadequate that it makes me feel good about my own imposter syndrome. Like, oh, okay, at least I'm at least there's hope for me, right? Which is a kind of a terrible thing to say, but it is what it is.
How were you able to overcome imposter syndrome in your case?
It just took time. It took time, and it took having successful engagements under my belt, right? When things went right, when I was recognized for doing work that was good, and seeing systems in place that I've designed that aren't falling apart, right? Um, Once you get that momentum, it does ease your mind quite a bit, right? When you can look back at the progress that you've made and feel good about it. So it's just a process, I feel. All right. Do you think leadership bias affects how men and women are promoted in tech roles? Why or why not? So, leadership bias is the tendency to associate leadership qualities with men more than women, often leading to fewer opportunities for women to advance. It's quite wordy.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Um, so again, I'm going to keep using this generational example. I don't think as much as like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I still feel like there are male dominated positions where you'll see mostly men having these quote unquote big roles, these leadership roles. But I also see companies who are encouraging women to get on these roles. We're encouraging women to be able to progress and kind of break that glass ceiling. Um, so when it comes about, so the question really, before I kind of start thinking about anything else, is whether it affects our promotion in tech roles. I think it does, but as much as 20 years ago, 30 years ago, no, no, not at all.
It's a fair perspective. I generally like the direction that the world has headed, right? Well, in the sense of there are for sure more opportunities. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than it was 20 years ago? Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just a lot more opportunity now and a lot more awareness now compared to 20 years ago, for sure. So I'd agree with that sentiment. Um, okay, this is one that I think this is personally directed at me. Is it okay to use the word guys to address a mixed group of men and women? I do it all the time, so I hope it is okay. What do you think, Josephine?
I don't know if this is the American thing. I really try to be more um, aware of it, and I always catch myself because I have my class and I'm like, okay, guys, let's do this. Okay, guys, and it's just a natural way of speak with my friends with at work. Um, to me, I don't find it as a problem because guys is now just a general term, men, women, dogs, cat, whatever, right? I even say, oh, come on, guys, talking to my dogs, right? Hey, guys, come on, time for food. So I think it's okay based on the culture that I grew up in. But again, we also start to see a change of gender awareness and some people who don't fit in a specific category that might find this term to be offensive. So you do have to be aware that be careful. You have to learn your environment and learn the people you work with. And if they're a bit sensitive with the type of gender assignments that you give them, so definitely respect that, right? So that's what I do now is I try to analyze my environment, analyze the people I work with. And if they have specific pronouns that they prefer, then I will not use this term guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've just been using guys for basically my entire life. It's a very automatic thing, and there's no malice. involved when I say it, and I don't think like no one's ever really pointed that out as being a problem, at least to me. Um, and again, like you said, it's pretty much, at least to me, a very neutral term, right? And I don't know. I feel like it's still okay, but like Josephine said, it really depends on your environment, where you work. It's very environment dependent, let's say. Um, Probably not an environment that I do very well in. I don't know. It's very, very difficult for me to untrain that. Um, how do you address a group of women in a professional setting? I just say guys. I
Say
would never
guys
say
too.
girls or ladies or folks.
Yeah.
The word folks to
I
me
don't use,
makes me sound like I'm in a cowboy movie, like,
come
hey
on,
folks.
folks, let's go.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very country. um, I don't use folks. I think folks is an old term. I like my parents use this, my grandparents use this. Stick to ladies. I think ladies is very classy. I like that term. You're talking to older women, you're talking to mature women by saying ladies. Definitely in my English group, I had a group of professional women. I always call them ladies. But girls, I find that to be offensive in a sense when you're talking in a
it's like
professional setting,
diminutive,
right?
right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, in a professional setting. Now, with like your friends, hey, I'm going out with my girlfriends, cool. But in a professional setting, I think you have to be careful with that term because you might sound like you're belittling someone's maturity.
right, for sure. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Girls, not so much in a professional setting. With your friends, yeah, sure. Ladies, yeah, classy. I like that. Folks, like I said, feels like I'm in a cowboy movie, but there are people who say folks. My boss likes to say folks, so it's not a big deal. Uh, all right. So that was a little bit of a Q&A session. And how do you discover your unique strengths? So I've got a little QR code here that takes you to the understandmyself.com site. And I believe, I think one of the English for IT helpers might put that link in the chat. I believe you'd be able to use this resource to understand your own personal Big Five personality traits, what we discussed earlier on in the presentation, the different scores for neuroticism and agreeableness and what have you. So if you navigate to that site, you should be able to do that test yourself, and it'll help you figure out which aspects of your personality influence the way you interact with others, and you might find that there are certain aspects that you can work on, right? Like maybe you want to be more assertive, you can focus on setting that goal for yourself, right? To be more assertive, um, to be more tuned in to your personality and how you can work towards um, either bettering yourself or understanding a little bit more about how you tick. And as we mentioned, we do have the Power Skills for Work course with a lovely 50% off discount. And this course trains soft skills and can help you train yourself to be a bit more assertive because, if you're confident in a language, you tend to be more assertive in it, right? I know I'm a lot more assertive in English. It's my native language. I feel very comfortable in it. When I speak another language, not so much, right? But you can fix it. You've got plenty of opportunities to train that. Power Skills for Work course is a good way of doing that. 50% off with the code POWER50. We've got custom tailored learning program, so it's geared towards you as an individual, and you get a very fancy blockchain verified cert that you can share on LinkedIn to show that you're taking steps to improve yourself and your communication skills. That was the end of the deck, but if you guys have any questions for the pair of us, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll stick around for the next 5 to 10 minutes or so and have a chat amongst ourselves or answer any questions that you may have. I hope you guys found it interesting.
And if I can just add about the Power Skills course, I definitely recommend this. To me, I always say that the best investment you can do for yourself is education. So anything that can help you become a better professional, become a better person, it is the best investment ever. No one can take away that skill from you, right? So definitely encourage everyone to take this Power Skills course, especially if you need that confidence to be a strong English speaker, that confidence to be a good leader, that confidence to be more assertive, right? It's definitely a good course to take.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, confidence in your ability to communicate really does make a huge difference in the workplace. And I'm not just trying to sell the course. I'm telling you guys, if you're confident in what you're saying, uh, people do look up to you more and take you more seriously with just that confidence, right? It's a really good skill to develop, and you develop confidence through competence in a lot of ways. So if you're good at
Oh,
something,
I
it
like
tends to
that.
give you confidence,
That
right?
confidence to competence. That should be a shirt. I like that.
All right, there you go. English variety swag, right? Need a confidence through competence shirt.
Competence.
Maybe we'll raffle it off, you know. So yeah, feel free to ask us questions or to let us know if you enjoyed it, enjoyed hearing the two of us chat with you guys. We have one from Faiz. Sir and Madam, I'm from Bangladesh. How can I improve my speaking level? Well, with any skill, right, you improve by practice. And when it comes to language, there are four main skills, right? Reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And, you know, practicing, like listening to a lot of content helps you with your listening, but doesn't it does help you speak in a way, right? It'll help you improve your inactive vocabulary. But if you really want to improve a specific skill, in your case, speaking, you need to find opportunities to do that, right? And there are, we're living in the 21st century where there are plenty of opportunities, right? There's a lot of online speaking clubs. English for IT has a speaking club that happens every Friday where you can be in a group with native speakers who will help you correct your mistakes, help keep the conversation going. There are different apps on the internet that you can look into that will partner you with a native speaker, and you can have some language exchange. But the key thing is to really to practice. And I feel that consistent practice trumps like 3 hours once a week, right? So if you can do, 10 to 15 minutes a day every day with that consistency, you'll see better results than, trying to squeeze everything onto one day. That would be my advice for you. And English for IT,
Yeah,
just
and in fact,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So, of course, practice. I think that's definitely with anything. You always need to practice. For me, in my experience learning other languages, I had to learn Arabic. I had to learn Zulu, just because I've been traveling. What I've learned has helped me a lot is listening to music and listening to certain TV shows in that language, right? Don't listen to the dubbed out, like your native language. So if you want to listen to a Korean show, don't listen to your native language and then like read the Korean subtitles. Right? Do the opposite, because the pronunciation, the sound, really helps you kind of, what's that scientific term? I don't know. It does something to your brain chemistry, right? The way that you hear helps you reiterate and repronounce that specific word, right? So yeah, again, music, listening to, watching TV shows in that specific language you want to learn is a big bonus.
Yeah, for sure. And it's fun as well, right? Like if you pick a good show, it makes it less of a chore. Um,
Right.
and Faiz writes, how can I join the English for IT speaking club? I'm assuming you mean the speaking club. So There's a link if you're watching this on YouTube. I think English for IT just posted a link for the speaking club, so you can check it out there. Runs every Friday. Um, and I just wanted to say I have my suspicions now that Josephine is the CIA agent, learning Zulu and Arabic and living in
Stop
DC.
it.
I don't know, working in security. Things are adding up.
Oh, da da da. I just really like, I'm a very people person, and I always um there's a difference when you speak in the language. How can I say this? There's a difference when you communicate in the language of the people you work with in this way. And also the way that you can express yourself. Like the way I can express myself in English is very different than the way I can express myself in Arabic, right? So it's just most makes you more connected with the individuals you're speaking with. So if you're working in a setting where you mostly work with English speakers, you're mostly reading English texts, right? It's in your best interest to try to be fluent in that, learn the expressions, learn the idioms, right? Just so that you can understand the also the culture behind the language. It's not just learning and speaking it, but also the different nuances of the language, the culture, the I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a certain flavor to it, I would say,
There you
right?
go.
And
That's the word.
I remember when I started really seriously uh, learning, I speak Russian as well. Um, Colleagues that I worked with before, when I only spoke English with them, their personality, like I felt like I had a different idea of their personality when I was speaking to them in their native language, right?
That's true.
It's
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
like a
yeah.
different
Yeah.
person, which was very interesting to see. All right, we've got about 2 minutes left. If you guys have any last questions for us before we say goodbye. I hope you all had a good time. See, Valerie says, thank you guys. Very interesting session with very interesting people. See you again. Well, thank you very much for your kind words, Valerie. Thank you for joining us. It was really fun and useful. Thank you. Well, thank you, Igor.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for
Yes, thank you for
joining
coming.
us. All right. Cool. I think we can call it a wrap. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Feel free to check out the Power Skills for Work course, 50% off with Power 50. It was Karuna Krishnasamy and Josephine Zola with you here today. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your
Right.
day, rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. So,
Right. Thank you,
bye.
everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Josephine. See ya.
Thanks, Bruno. See you.